Newfong was the first Aboriginal to be employed as a journalist in the mainstream print media at the Sydney Morning Herald and The Australian.
His big break came in 1971 when he was hired by the legendary progressive editor Adrian Deemer to work on The Australian. Adrian was his mentor as well as his boss, and he advised John to develop all his journalistic skills and not just be typecast. He dressed well and had a rich speaking voice. He avoided using what he called a copulatory adjective in his public statements. In short, he didn't appear to be a radical. He became the first Aboriginal editor of Identity, the influential Indigenous magazine.
This is a pre-election issue. What view of white politics does Mr. Newfong get from the editor's chair?
Well, I think they're completely indifferent to Aborigines, except when public interest or public embarrassment forces them to recognise the need to do something about the Aboriginal people. I think perhaps indifference is being even euphemistic.
I know the Australian Labor Party has a full-page advertisement in your current issue, doesn't it?
Yes.
Urging itself on the consideration of the black voters. Do you support editorially the Labor Party or any of the other parties?
Well, I might say the Liberal Party was approached too and asked if they'd like to take out advertising. I mean, if you're asking me for my personal views, then I'm as sceptical of the Labor Party as I am of any other major political party in power. Many of their policies and promises have been made in opposition, and anything promised in opposition sounds good.
He was a gifted writer, but his passionate advocacy for his people moved him to scale back his journalism to become a contributor while he fought for Indigenous justice in many Aboriginal organisations and worked as an advisor to federal and state politicians.
We're up against the mining companies, we're up against the vested interests, and we ought to look and see how sophisticated their lobby is in Canberra and how many millions they spend on it. And I think that we ought to realise that the only way we can counter this is to be on the front door.
Newfong was the first to properly leverage the power of international pressure and media support for his people's cause. This was an important factor behind the establishment of the Aboriginal Tent Embassy in 1972 at Parliament House in Canberra, where he was chief spokesperson.
What do you think of the federal government's action in removing the embassy this morning?
I think it's incredibly gutless. If they moved as fast on a lot of other things as they have this morning, then we'd be a lot better off. Everybody'd be a lot better off. They're frightened of themselves. They're frightened of reality. They're frightened of our being here when the Commonwealth Prime Minister's conference is on.
Among his contemporaries, John Newfong is a legend as a journalist and as a strategic thinker. He once wrote an extraordinary preface to a national Aboriginal health strategy paper. This was a bureaucratic document that was introduced by what amounted to a short, blistering editorial. He wrote of Aborigines being dressed in the hand-me-downs of dispossession and dispersal, victims of a history forged in the cauldrons of colonisation. This editorial showed his disgust at the treatment of Aborigines, his commitment to Aboriginal advancement, and also the power of his writing.